Tonight, I've got the bringer of funk himself, political analyst and host of the Roland Martin Unfiltered, Roland Martin himself, who joins us live from the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial in Washington, D.C. Roland, thank you for coming on the show.
Glad to have you here. The National Juneteenth Foundation is having their event behind us, and so glad to be out here.
Roland, this is the first new federal holiday to be announced since Ronald Reagan signed into law the bill that made Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday a federal holiday in 1983. Tell me what it feels like to be standing on such hallowed ground on the night the nation is commemorating Juneteenth as a federal holiday for the first time.
Well, first and foremost, on this weekend, we need to give thanks to folks like State Representative Al Edwards, my Alpha fraternity brother. He died last year at the age of 83. He was the father of Juneteenth in Texas. He was the one who championed that bill that got to become a state law when Texas became the first state to make it a holiday. People need to understand that prior to that happening, there was no official day or event that marked that dealt with slavery. Now, Juneteenth, where the enslaved people of African descent in Texas found out, but there was still 250,000 people who still were enslaved even after that. Chattel slavery did not end until December 1865. And so what we need to understand, I've been seeing these people on social media, frankly, pissing me off, whining and complaining, who asked for Juneteenth. This is a day that we should be using, that Texans use to empower other Texans. It was a voter registration day. It was a black education day. It was a black economic day. It wasn't just a day where we had barbecues and hung out. And so I need the black folks who are not familiar with Juneteenth to understand what we did with Juneteenth and how we should do the exact same thing. Don't make this holiday a mattress sale day. Make it a day where we force America to deal with its past, its present, to change our future.
Roland, so while the House voted overwhelmingly in support of declaring Juneteenth a national holiday, several members of the Republican Party decided to oppose it, 14 members to be exact. Do you think this opposition is going to be as long-lasting as it was with Martin Luther King Day?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look, we need to understand what's going on. That's 14 white Republicans who voted the way they did, yet this is the exact same party that will defend Confederate monuments, that in Alabama, in Mississippi, and South Carolina, where they still have Confederate Day, Jeff Davis Day. And so you don't see them complaining about that. 2 Republicans from Alabama. I want to know, do they stand against Confederate Day in Alabama? I don't think so. And so we need to understand that the Republican Party today is the party of white nationalism. It was Democrats, especially Southern Democrats, who opposed the ending of slavery, who opposed these various events. The Republican Party today is the party where Southern Democrats used to be. And so we need to understand, Yodit, that we're operating in this age of white fear. January 6th, the insurrection, that was a response to black voters because Donald Trump targeted black voters in Fulton County, Atlanta. He specifically called out Philadelphia, black folks, Detroit, black folks, Milwaukee, black folks. The partial recount in Wisconsin was only targeted Milwaukee. So January 6th was a direct result of black liberation and the power of our vote. And so we need to understand they're not going anywhere because they are freaking out because they're seeing you on television. They're seeing me on my own show. They're seeing us use our power. See, we are the reason they did not want people of Africa to sit to learn how to read during slavery. That's why they outlawed it. So we need to understand what we're up against. This thing was not going to end with Trump being kicked out. We're going to see this battle over the next 50 to 100 years. So black folks, get ready because we are in a war over the culture and the idea of what it means to be American. They hate that we now have an opinion and we have a vote to actually make it a reality.
Roland, when President Biden signed the bill making Juneteenth a federal holiday, he chastised the Senate for not passing voting rights legislation just as quickly, specifically the For the People Act. But some would argue that the president could himself do more on the issue of voting rights. What do you say to people who feel making Juneteenth a federal holiday is just more symbolism and even a distraction from real issues that need more focus?
Well, first of all, I would tell those people that's nonsense. First, every day in the House and the Senate, they pass bills renaming post offices and things along those lines. And so there's lots of symbolism. But the reality is this here. This does matter. But here's the deal for all of the black folks who are saying that, what are you doing on those other bills? If you are black in North Carolina, are you calling Tillis and Burr? If you are black in Alabama, are you calling your two senators? If you're black in Texas, are you calling Senator John Cornyn, who sponsored this bill, to say, why aren't you supporting House Bill 1 and the John Lewis Act? I would challenge those very people. What are they doing when it comes to their city hall, their school board, their county district? What are they doing? See, it's real easy to run your mouth on Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, but are you actually engaged in this process? Latasha Brown and Cliff Albright and Black Voters Matter, they're kicking off their voting caravan from Mississippi here to the nation's capital, and they're going to arrive here on June 26th. The Poor People's Campaign, they were in Charleston, West Virginia on Monday, marching outside of Senator Joe Manchin's office. They're putting in the work. I challenge anybody who say this is symbolism. What are you doing? What work are you involved in, or are you simply sitting your behind being a keyboard gangster?
Well, Roland, I was actually going to ask you about that. I know you've been talking voting rights. I know you've been very vocal and active in that movement. I know you're working with Black Voters Matter, an organization we've had on the show a few times before, and they're taking what they call the Blackest Bus in America on a voter outreach tour. Tell us more about your involvement in this effort and why initiatives like this are so important, especially now.
Well, long before MSNBC, CNN, they were calling Latasha and Cliff, I was having them on my show on TV One, on Tom Joyner Morning Show. I've supported them from day one. And what they're doing is not just driving from Mississippi. They're stopping in multiple cities and having rallies and events every single day. They're registering people along the way. They're activating folks along the way. And so you see it right there. If y'all could pull it, if y'all could do me a favor, if y'all could pull the video back up, people should see those dates. So people around the country can see,
yes,
at the end of that video, they had the dates where they're going to be. That's important because they want to use those dates as rallying moments in those particular cities. They're gonna the last city before they get to D.C. is going to be Richmond. So when they get to the end, if y'all can just freeze those dates, because that's important. Because I need people to understand, voting is not the be-all to end-all, but it is a part of the process. You can't be advocating for policy changes if you don't realize that poly is the root word of policy. What's the root word of politician? Poly. It's the same thing. And so we've got to activate our people in Nashville, Tennessee, Atlanta, Columbus, all those places where they're stopping. We got to activate our folks. And so that's what we have to understand. Again, voting is not going to fix every problem, but you cannot have policy changes if you don't change the politicians, which means we got to put the right folks in place. If you're sitting at home complaining and saying, well, nothing is changing, that's because we're not using the power of our vote. If more of us voted in Fort Worth, Texas, Deborah Peoples would have been the first black mayor of Fort Worth. She fell 6,000 votes short. Do you know how many black folks in Fort Worth did not vote? And so that's what I mean. We got to use what's at our disposal to be able to use it as a weapon to break down Jim Crow 2.0. But if we just simply complain, and if we don't vote, if we don't practice cooperative economics, if we're not sitting here teaching and training our people, then we're going to be in the same position. And so if you're not doing your part, then you're part of the problem.
Okay, so Roland, we've talked Juneteenth. It's a big weekend because of Juneteenth, but of course, also Father's Day is on Sunday. You don't have any biological kids, Roland, but you know better than anyone I know how fatherhood goes beyond genetics. You've been a father figure for so many, and you've been daddy, Uncle Roro to your nieces. So tell me what fatherhood means to you.
6 of them.
Yes.
Fatherhood, look, my mom and dad celebrated 54 years of marriage last week. My grandparents were married more than 40 years. And so I understand what it means to stand in the gap. When I made the decision to be a godfather, godfather doesn't mean that you give gifts just on Christmas and their birthday. You stand in the gap when the dad ain't doing his job. And so, yeah, my wife and I've had to raise 6 of my nieces. Those 2 right now, that's Atlantis and Anna. We raised 4 other nieces. We've had 6 at one time. And so that's what it means. It means instilling in them a work ethic, discipline, faith, all those different things. And so we've got to use what we have to use. Black folks have been doing this for a long time. My mom and dad took in several of my cousins who had issues with their mom and dad and helped raise them. And so I experienced that. And so we have to recognize that we can't simply just say, hey, that ain't my problem. I want to live my life. You know, I could have easily, and I tell you, when I think back and I add it up, I know I've spent in excess of $1 million on tutors and getting my nieces up on health care and all those different things. So that was an investment in their future to give them an opportunity. None of us are going to live forever, but we have to understand that our lineage and our legacy is defined by what we do with our family. And so I wanted to make sure that my nieces were put in position. I can't live their life for them, but what I can do is make sure that they are put in position to lead a great life, and that's really what that was all about. And I appreciate having a wife who understood that as well. She could have easily said, hey, that ain't our kids. I don't want them in our house, but she understood what that meant as well. And so black folks have done this for a long time. We raised nieces and nephews and cousins and folk who play cousins. And so this is what our history has always been about. And so that's why I did it, and I would never, I would do the exact same thing if I had to do it 100 times over.
Shout out to my soror, Jackie, beautiful wife. Okay, now I've met your parents, and I know you're extremely tight with both, but tell us more about your dad, who, by the way, looks like he could be your younger brother. What do you do to celebrate him on Father's Day? They just left my house.
Well, look, my parents been to my house for the past month, so look, we already celebrated all that now. So, like I said, so understand why I also believe in voting. My parents worked the polls in Texas, so they were with me 3 months in April. They went home to work the election in May, a municipal election, because they're poll workers. My mom is a precinct judge, and then they came back. So they've been with me for the last month, hanging out, going all around. So I get my love of music from my dad, and so we spend time with them. My parents were in great health. You know, my dad is turned 74. My mom will be 74 in November. You're right, black don't crack. People like that can't be your parents. I'm like, it is. So brother got some good DNA. Brother got some good DNA. So, you know, so look, so we hang out, we have fun, and so that's what it's all about. My family's getting together on Sunday. I was gonna fly home to be with them, to hang out, but I got to go to Paul Mooney's memorial service on Wednesday in L.A. But again, they were with me for the last month, so we hung out well. So, you know, and my dad, yesterday was Eddie Levert's 79th birthday, and I had the OJ's perform at their 50th wedding anniversary, so we had him on FaceTime, and my dad told a joke. I said, man, they gonna move in here. My dad was like, well, he got 2 houses, so we might as well just have 2 houses too. So we might decide to move here. I said, no, y'all got to go back to the house y'all living in Texas. Y'all got to go back home. But it's all good. It's all good. I like hanging out with my parents. We always have a good time. So it's all good.
They're a bunch of fun. Okay, so Roland, as special as these holidays are, they can also be difficult for some, especially those who may have lost a parent. What words of encouragement could you offer anyone who may be feeling down this weekend?
Look, folks, I lost my grandfather when I was 15 years old, and that was the first major death that I experienced. And that was difficult because the role that he played. But what we do have is we have memories. We have those life lessons. That's one of the reasons why I shoot. I'm the one of my family who's always shot video, because everybody else in my family, if I let them shoot, we'll see nothing but ceilings and floors. So we have to. I mean, look, you know, loss is a part of life. And it's hard to think about. I mean, I mentioned my grandfather. I mean, my fear of death started when I was 15 years old, because I mean, it was like, yo, what? I mean, it was a traumatic experience, losing someone you love. And I still think about them. I think about my grandmothers who I've lost. And so we have to cherish those memories and those moments. We also have to understand that we got to keep on living. And so we've got to also celebrate those who are here. And so if you lost a father and you miss your father on this weekend, spend time with your uncles, with your cousins, with your brothers. Spend time with the men at your church, in your community, because even though we may have a connection to our Father, that one individual, do realize that we can serve that role for people all across our neighborhoods and communities. And black daddies matter. The love of a black daddy matters, and I understand that. There's a reason I hug and embrace my nieces, because I want them to understand that love and affection from a black man and what that means, and as opposed to them thinking that it's an abusive thing. And so we got to be very conscious of that. And so I need people to understand also, don't act, and I love how we appreciate mothers, but I need us to appreciate black daddies a lot more. We love talking about help mama, buy mama stuff, but daddy means a whole lot in terms of the foundation of who we are. And so I say celebrate somebody who still impacts your life, even if they're not your biological father, because they matter, and so they need that love and affection, and so it's critically important.